Welcome back to the Meet the Athlete podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by the Mo Slayer, Ellis Cross. Off the back of the season of his life, beating Mo Farah at the Vitality 10K, a debut at the half marathon distance, and recently coming second at the Great South Run. We talk about all things coaching, running, moving location, finances. So I really hope you enjoy this episode of the Meet the Athlete podcast with Ellis Cross. Thank you, Ellis, for your time, and I hope you enjoy this episode. So guys, got Ellis here on the Meet the Athlete podcast. Welcome, Ellis. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Cole.
No problem. So obviously, I actually know you in person. You live locally to me, but you've had a pretty big year this year. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the one that probably everyone kind of springs to mind when we talk about Ellis Cross, and it is of course beating Mo Farah at the Vitality 10K this year. Can you just sum up how that felt on the day?
Oh, it was crazy. You know, it's something that you don't realise is going to kind of take off until it does. Like you just, it's a race. You see every race as that, and obviously it kind of exploded and took kind of the press by storm, I guess. Which obviously to my surprise, but was obviously brilliant, like amazing kind of feeling, and like the experiences I kind of gained off the back of that have again like subsequently been quite insane as well, and it just kind of it helped massively, like again not for myself kind of but for the sport as well. Gave it a bit of a snowball effect, and kind of just went to show as well kind of how like amazing like the running community is, because so many people kind of reached out to kind of congratulate me and stuff, which again was brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. I remember watching. I was literally, my parents were doing an event the same day. I was literally at the seafront streaming on my phone, like, sod the parents. I didn't care what they were doing. I was like, Ellis Cross is beating Mo Farah, like last 100 meters. I was going crazy. What was going through your head when were you expecting Mo to like come straight back past you, or like in the best way possible? Were you expecting a bit more of a fight from him?
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty quiet like throughout the race. Really, he kind of went off pretty quick in the first like couple hundred meters, and I was like, oh, it's Farah. He's just going to run away from everyone like that. That would just be that. And obviously, I've said it like so many times. The race for me again was just kind of like a sharpener race, really, for the season ahead. Like off the back of altitude training camp, it wasn't something that I'd kind of targeted. And I've said to so many people again before that I literally got my entry in like just before the deadline. So I was quite lucky to even be kind of on the start line in obviously the mass like championship start as opposed to the elite start just altogether. But obviously, yeah, he just kind of like sat in on the actual race and kind of let it happen, which was quite weird. So again, you're kind of thinking it's Mo Farah. He's just going to sit there and wait until the finish, and then he's just going to kick on, like off he goes. So I'd almost settled for second until we took that final corner, and I was like, I know Mo, how he races his how he wins all those titles and the championships. He likes to be on the inside if we're going round a bend, and off the final straight he wasn't on the inside. So I was like, I might be able to get this, and you never believe it again until you've completely crossed the line and gone through the tape. So yeah, obviously that feeling's like did that just happen? Like, is he still there?
Yeah, for sure. That's got to be up there in terms of feelings, for sure. But obviously, you've done like a pretty kind of mad range of events this year. You've done some 10Ks on the track, you've done some cross country, you've done some road relays. And obviously, a couple of weeks ago now, well, it's actually pretty much a month ago now, I think. You obviously did the Great South Run, 10 miles.
Yeah,
you came second. How was that?
Yeah, that was that again. Yeah, that was a brilliant. I was really happy with that kind of performance. I'd had like a good battle with Ben Connor. He's obviously such a strong guy, and I knew before like going into the race that he was always going to be a bit of a problem throughout the race because of the caliber of athlete that he is. Obviously, he's an Olympian. But I ran that 10-mile race like differently to how I've ran like the half marathon, and I kind of wish I'd actually done a 10-mile race before making my half marathon debut, if anything, because I don't know, it opened my eyes a little bit to how you can run like a further distance. And I just kind of approached the 10-mile as if it was like a 10K race. and got to 10k and then kind of managed it to the 10-mile point. And I felt good. You know, things have been going well in terms of like training, so I knew I was in a good place. But again, I was really pleased with that to come second. Would have been nice to win, but when you're racing somebody like Ben Connor, you can't have it your own way every week. So
Yeah, of course. So I was using the app because obviously there was no live stream for the Great South Run, which is pretty disappointing. There has been live stream in previous years, but there wasn't one this year. So just for people that maybe didn't track you on the app or weren't able to see it in person, can you just give us a quick rundown of how the race kind of planned out? Because I looked at the 5K split and you were nowhere near where I thought you would be. And obviously you came through at the end or later on in the race. But yeah, talk about the race bit.
Well, that's the other issue, is that people actually don't, unless you were there, you don't know how the race went, because the actual splits are all wrong as well. Like I wasn't behind it. I was actually on the front of it at 5k, and I've checked my splits since, and it's got me like 13 seconds behind or something at like 5k. I was like, but there's no way I would have clawed that back. So no, that was incorrect. But yeah, we went off fairly quick. I think we opened up like a 4:40 mile, but it's quite a quick stretch. If you know the course, it's the Great South Run. In Portsmouth, it's a fast opening start to any race, and it's a quick course in general, to be honest with you. We opened up with like a 4:40, and there was like myself, Ben, Ross Millington as well on the front, kind of like driving it on. And then we went through the second mile was like 4:41 as well, so it was pretty quick. I didn't actually wear my watch for this one because I knew I just wanted to kind of like race it. That's how I kind of perform my best, forget about the time, and then just kind of see what happens, hopefully get dragged around by people. But we went through, I think we must have gone through 5k in like 14:30, maybe just under, and then I'm pretty sure 10k was like just outside like 29 and bits. And I felt good at that point. And then I'm pretty sure at 10k it was just myself, Ben Connor, and Omar Ahmed. And yeah, Omar was kind of sat in on myself and Ben. We were kind of like shoulder to shoulder. And I think it was probably around a 7.5 mile mark when Ben put in a little burst. I mean, the course is quick. So when I say there's a slight climb, it's like very, very minimal. But there's a slight climb up like one street, and Ben had like pushed on at that point, and Omar went with him, and I was like, I can't go that. It was too quick. So I was like, I'm just going to get to the top of this hill and push off the top. At the top of the hill, Ben managed to push off the top. Omar was struggling a little bit, having put that little burst in, and I managed to run off the top of that hill and get past Omar. And at that point, when you come into like 2 miles to go, because it's one complete straight to the finish, you can see the finish pretty much from like the 8-mile marker. And it's just like just a tiny little speck. It's like, oh my god, like how far away is that? And one straight line, and I could obviously just see Ben like in the distance. I was like, it's hard to gauge whether you're actually closing or you're falling further off, and you kind of like, I was itching to like look back as well and see how far Omar was behind, because again I would have been like delighted with second anyway. But it was just kind of managing it over that last couple of miles, because it's quite windy as well, obviously along the seafront. But again, the time, I think it was 47:32. I was absolutely buzzing with. But don't get me wrong, we got it on kind of like a perfect day. The weather was perfect. The course was brilliant, like the atmosphere, and obviously great run. Being the organisers as well, you couldn't have asked for a better setup to run quick.
Yeah, for sure. I remember looking at the tracking, and I remember seeing Charlie Brisley, who is a good runner in his own right, but I didn't expect to see him in front of you. I think he was first when I looked at the 5k tracking. He was like with Ben Connor, and then the tracking said you were like 20 seconds behind or something. I was a bit baffled, to be honest, but good to know that the tracking is an absolute shambles.
Yeah, well, it was incorrect, but Charlie was there, to be fair. He was actually there, and obviously he had a great run, but the tracking was all wrong. I wasn't actually that far behind at 5k.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously you're coached by Mick Woods, head coach from Aldershot Farnham District. How does that work, having a coach who's like not in the same location, who's a remote coach, if you like?
Yeah, so we're staying kind of like regular communication, like phone calls, and I'll kind of like message him for like training sessions, and we'll have the conversation on the phone as to what to do leading into the week, and then we'll manage it via like kind of text message. And whenever I do like a session, he always asks for my splits, which pretty useless at actually getting across to him, to be honest with you. But yeah, and then I'll kind of head over to him in Teddington over there every once in a while, just have a sit down, catch up, coffee and lunch, talk over training, which is ideal. But obviously it's a lot more difficult than having hands on. But again, you know, he's working in the university capacity and Aldershot as well, so he's kind of got a lot on his plate anyway. And like how he does it is crazy. But you know, he's an excellent coach, so I can't complain with anything he's done.
Yeah, for sure. I have heard good things. How does it work being like obviously a top level athlete? Are you pretty self sufficient when it comes to your training, or do you still seek that kind of that extra guidance, that third party like point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I need Mick there, because if I set my own training, I think I would just, you know, I'm sure all athletes are the same. I honestly, I have so much credit for the athletes that can coach themselves, because there's absolutely no way that I would be able to kind of set myself the work that's necessary or like needed to be done, because I would always just choose the easy option, or just choose like the sessions that I kind of want to do or enjoy, but it's not necessarily the work that gets you into a position that you'd want to be in. So having Mick there is ideal for that. I am kind of self-sufficient in the fact that I've learned quite a lot from Mick anyway. Having been with him for so many years, I understand his philosophy completely and have completely bought into that. So he knows that I can kind of look after myself around training, and I know what's kind of needed to compete at a certain level. But having someone there for the communication and like have the feedback, and also have that little bit of input, especially coming from someone like himself, so experienced within the sport, is crucial, especially for myself.
Yeah, for sure. Do you find it useful having that kind of that third party point of view, especially now that you're delving into the longer distance stuff, just to kind of keep you a bit reined in, you know, you're not going crazy doing like 120, 130 mile weeks, just hugging you back a little bit?
No, absolutely. And obviously since I've kind of like stepped up in terms of distance and ran obviously like 10 miles on the road, ran half marathon, that's when I needed kind of make the most, because that again was stepping into kind of the unknown for me and making a debut. I didn't obviously know what needed to be done. So if anything, I needed the communication a lot more in the past year or so in comparison to previously, where I've only ever competed over 5K, 10Ks, and you just kind of get used to competing over that distance. So yeah,
for sure. So for those that don't know, obviously you went to St Mary's University, you trained in, like you said, Teddington for a little bit, and then you made the decision to move down to Canterbury. Like, what impacted your decision to kind of move places when obviously what you had going was working pretty well?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, you know, it's one of those things. I mean, Teddington is an area that's not cheap in terms of living, especially kind of coming straight out of like university. You know, it's living in quite an expensive area of London, and obviously if you come out of university and you want to compete at a high level, but you've also got to maintain it, and you've got to earn, you've got to be financially stable as well to be around the area. It kind of like over time like lost its quality a little bit for me in terms of like the work, like just the balance of work and training. I feel like obviously the reason for staying around the area was to train and be like the best athlete I could be. But when that becomes hindered by working to just stay, to just have like a roof above your head, then it kind of loses that bit for me. So moving to Canterbury was the best option for me. And obviously the main reason was because Anna, obviously my partner, lives in Canterbury. So yeah, made that move. And obviously, you know, having you guys and having Canterbury Endurance around is obviously perfect as well. I've obviously got Donald to run with most days. And if anything, I run with more people now than I did back when I was in Teddington. So I would say, if anything, it's potentially picked up in terms of like my social aspect of like running.
Okay.
And, you know, again, change of environment, having lived around Teddington for like 7 years. You, as much as Bushy Park is an absolute dream, and Richmond Park and having those Royal Parks on your doorstep, they're unbelievable. Over a certain period of time, when you're clocking plenty of miles around there, it does become a little bit tedious.
Yeah, for sure. Have you found that, so moving down to Canterbury, it's based in Kent for the listeners at home that don't know where it is, it's a pretty isolated area in terms of like top level runners. Have you found like it hard to train to that top level when you're kind of you basically doing sessions alone? Yes, you can have some company on maybe the slower runs, the easy runs, but when you're doing those sessions and you're trying to hit those paces, have you struggled to kind of get that quality in?
No, not really. I mean, like for like a year or so, I had that kind of at Teddington anyway, really within the group. And for me anyway, it's having like the social side in and around the sessions. If I actually break down how much of the running I do on my own, it's actually not that much, because obviously I've got guys for steady runs. Like I don't steady run stupidly quick. I can run with a group for that, and obviously I can meet like Canterbury endurance guys for warm up, and then I can do my own kind of like session, and I can do the cool down with them. So I'm really only doing like half an hour, like twice or three times a week of training session on my own. So it for me, it's not really a problem, and it's just something that you just have to accept anyway and kind of get done. And that's where obviously your self motivation comes in as well.
Yeah, for sure. On a completely different level, obviously I'm nowhere near the level you sort of were, but a couple of years ago I used to be trained down at the track and there was no one else sort of like at my sort of pace. I was doing a lot of training alone, but having people who were also running in the same area, I think it's just really good just to kind of it keeps you accountable. If you stop early, they're going to see it. So
yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I feel exactly the same. It's always nice to know when you're working hard, there's other people out there working hard and getting it done as well, which it definitely adds to the motivation for sure, knowing that you're not the only person out there getting it done, because obviously running at times can be quite a lonely thing. So seeing other people doing it, whilst you're out there getting it done is also ideal.
yeah, for sure. So obviously, well, this might be wrong to say, but I'd say you probably had the best year of your career this last year. Is there one thing that you would say is like your philosophy when it comes to your training that you would kind of put your recent success down to?
It's difficult to say, to be honest. I mean, increasing kind of like training for sure. Like I've just become a lot more consistent in terms of getting the training volume done over a number of weeks, whereas before, when I was living in Teddington, it was quite easy to drop off like those weeks when I feel tired. Just be like, oh look, I think I need a couple of easy days, or I need to like ease it back a little bit. But kind of like learning just to kind of like press on, if anything, through those tough phases has helped massively. But consistency, definitely, I've found that to be quite big, really. And obviously, coming off the back of good performances, it's also a lot easier to get that kind of snowball effect as well within training and racing, and kind of maintain it over a period of time. So that also helps.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of kind of news media outlets accredited you the UK's best club runner. You obviously heard that before. It probably gets a little bit, repetitive sometimes. But what's your opinion of the UK like club scene at the moment? Yeah, and your take on it.
I think like, it's a good place. I think obviously my next race is representing Aldershot of the national cross country relays. So there are very good club events out there. I think clubs need to kind of like drive their athletes to obviously represent them on a more frequent basis for sure. And there could probably be more events out there as well, really. And it's a shame when you've got like big events like the Great South as well, when you've got so many top level club athletes racing, not to be, like you said before, like not to be shown like on television or just any form of live stream is crazy. Is crazy to me as well. But I think it starts from a young age. Clubs recruitment probably needs to be a little bit better from people that are like at school level.
Yeah, for sure. I was speaking to one of my friends' younger brothers the other day, and they were saying they just don't do any cross country or athletics at school, and I just think that's absolutely crazy. Like that was the thing I look forward to at school. So I mean, if it's not happening there, I mean the club scene's doomed really.
It's a shame though, because again, I've spoken to so many people as well, kind of since like Vitality, that have kind of reached out to me and have said like they took like they're gutted they kind of took up running at like a later age, because they were never kind of given the opportunities at that younger age to give it a go. And it'd be so interesting to see the level of kind of athletes that we could have in the UK if we did kind of push that from a younger age, because so many people enjoy it, but some people just join like at a later stage in life, which is brilliant to see, but it's interesting to see what sort of level they could be. Do you know what I mean? And where the records would stand right now if we did have that intake as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you think about the records with the 1% of people that are trying athletics, but imagine we had 50% of people trying athletics, maybe a sub 2 hour would be easy, you know. Well,
Exactly.
we're speculating, but yeah, for sure. So this is going to be a little bit of a long-winded question, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But obviously, being an elite athlete or being a top-level athlete is very expensive. You're talking lots of shoes, recovery products, like obviously rent and stuff as well. But then you talk about things like trips to Font Romeu and stuff. How is it? Obviously, you're definitely good enough to have a big like pro contract on the table, but how is it financially without one, if that makes sense? Like, is it difficult trying to sustain your training without having like, you know, your big deal from Nike or Puma or whatever on the table?
Yeah, for sure. It really is. I think for myself though, life has become a lot easier since obviously signed with an agent. Having Sam there of Head Start, as he's been crucial for me in terms of like financial gain, finding opportunities, which is always ideal, I think, and obviously the pro to having an agent or manager there with you. But kind of prior to that, it was tough, as I say, like living in Teddington, having to balance it between like making ends meet and then competing at a high level. You know, there's a middle ground, and it can be very hard to kind of find that. And I say, like I've said it so many times, that I think the most difficult stage you could be in as an athlete is being in that kind of like sub-elite category, where you kind of don't know whether you're good enough to be on a professional contract or not. So it's like, do you go down one route, you just focus on your career, or do you go down the other route and completely focus on obviously your athletics and your running career? And I found that tough for sure, because, you know, one day I'd be like, oh, I think I need to focus on my career now, use my degree. Yep. And then the next week I'd be like, oh, I think I do have what it takes. I think I've got that kind of ability, and I know what it takes to give it a go at the athletics journey. And it is tough to find that middle ground. I definitely found that, but in the end I did get a bit of a balance together, to the point that it gave me that kind of propel forward to open up more opportunities, and meant that I could kind of work less, train more, and racing opportunities again found by like Sam that helped massively in like financial gain. And especially now, it just kind of like the harder I worked in terms of like my running, like the more opportunities that kind of opened up. Obviously now with Pure Sport as well, having those there, massive. And obviously having Maya Master as well as my recovery brand, being signed with them as well, is also huge. Having the recovery boots, they save me however much they kind of cost, and obviously the massage gun as well. You know, they're crucial things that also add up to increasing your performance, which then, you know, open doors to other opportunities. But it's definitely tough, and I think finding a balance is kind of key, finding that middle ground.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any point, and you can be completely honest, is there any point where you thought, actually, I might just sack this off? Like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? It literally, like last season, I was like, when I was living in Teddington, I contemplated just leaving it there and just being like, look, not sure it's for me. And it's crazy, because then obviously I got through that little rut and went to Font Romeu, and then went the complete opposite end of the spectrum. You know, getting that performance at Vitality helps massively. And, you know, it is again tough, and it's easy to say when we're kind of in the sport, but it is severely kind of undervalued, and athletes are severely underfunded as well. And it is a shame, but that hopefully that does increase in the future. But again, important to kind of do, you know, things like this, really get kind of personalities out there, let people understand the people that are behind the performances as well, and hopefully then you get kind of like the investment coming in from elsewhere to help increase those performances.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do think the Meet the Athlete podcast is on similar sort of self-marketing to Beating Mo Farah, if I'm completely
Absolutely.
So this next question, obviously, if you don't feel like you can answer this one because you don't want to burn bridges or whatever, that's absolutely fine. But when you train, what sort of shoes are your go-to shoes that you're using at the moment?
So I mean, I've been wearing the steady run shoes, Hoka or Hoka, however you want to pronounce it. I've been wearing Hokas for since 2017 now, when they actually started supporting me as a junior athlete. I've been wearing a steady run shoe, in particular the Arahi, because I need that little bit extra stability on the instep. But again, even if I didn't require a supportive shoe, I would still wear Hoka's neutral version, which is obviously the Clifton, which is very popular. And I just think that they're hard to beat, really, in terms of steady run shoes, especially just because of how light they are, how much cushioning you actually get, how much support that you kind of get. They're extremely responsive, and touch wood, they've looked after me very, very well over the years for those kind of steady miles. In terms of like training session shoes, I've kind of mixed it up, to be honest. Again, over the years, was wearing the Carbon X, probably the Hoka Carbon X, that is. Obviously, I think one of the best shoes I had was the Hoka Carbon X SPE, which I think wasn't around for long at all, but it was just basically a different upper, and I just liked the way that kind of snug fit. It was a bit like a sock. I used that for a while, and then I moved into wearing the Adidas Boston, actually, which people were quite surprised at, because I know some people like steady running that shoe, and I think you're not a massive fan yourself, are you? I remember you saying they're a little bit clunky, but I've got on really well with them, and yeah, I felt like they softened up over time as well, and that's the other thing as well in terms of like investment. They felt like they lasted ages, and they're still kind of like still just about alive now, to be honest. I've had them for a very long time. And then obviously racing, I've been racing recently in the Vaporfly next percent, but yeah, who knows, because things could change.
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, for those that don't know, you did also used to work in a running shop, so your knowledge of running shoes is pretty good. So yeah, maybe Hoka, if you want to bring back those special edition Carbon X's with the different upper, then maybe this is your point to do that. So obviously you've had a pretty good road season, some really big results, and then are you planning on doing the cross country relays at Mansfield this weekend?
Yeah, so that's the plan. Mansfield cross country relays, and then potentially a race between then. Might do like a league race, and then obviously do Liverpool, because I hear pretty much everyone's going to be at Liverpool. It's going to be quite a stacked and loaded field this year. A lot of people wanted to give that a crack, so I'm going to do that for sure, and then what happens there will dictate what I do after that. But probably looking like I'm going to be stepping back onto the roads, a 10k in France, and then Valencia 10k early Jan are the ones that we've penciled in, yeah, for the time being.
Yeah, very, very cool. Is there any plans in the next 12 months to tackle a marathon, or is that still, you want to master the half marathon before you move up, sort of thing?
Yeah, I still think I've got a lot of time that I can chunk off my half marathon time for sure. And this year's been a learning curve over that distance, if anything. But like I say, doing Great South really kind of opened my eyes to how I want to actually run a half marathon. And it'd be a lot different to how I ran the big half. But again, with it being a debut, the last thing you want to do is get a negative experience. And I gained quite a positive experience from that race. So it was worth being a lot more cautious doing that. And then I can kind of build on from that. So marathon will definitely happen. There's no doubt about that. Obviously pacing London again was a massive insight as to what it's kind of like, but I know it's not easy. I get into halfway pacing those boys. It's just like full credit to them having to go and do that again, because it felt like we were on our feet forever. So yeah, it will happen. I'm not sure in the next 12 months though.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know if maybe pacing at the London Marathon had maybe kind of spurred some excitement in there, because obviously you helped pace Ross Braden round to a 2:14, and he obviously had a great event. He is a planned guest on the podcast in the next few weeks, so I'm sure he'll say thank you to that. Thank you to you at some point. But yeah, I just didn't know if maybe that was on the card sooner than you'd expected because of the pacing. But it's good to hear that you've got your head screwed on. You want to give it time, you know.
Yeah, I think it's going to take. It's going. That's the one thing I actually learned, if anything, from the marathon is that they're not easy. Even though I haven't done one, I can tell they are not easy, and they take a significant amount of training over a long period of time to kind of put yourself in a position to really do one. The last thing anyone wants to do is turn up and give it a go half-heartedly, because it's a long way and it can do some damage.
Yeah, for sure. I've kind of done this a bit backwards. I want to go back to kind of the start for you, really. So, like, how did you get into running?
So again, from school, I was actually quite fortunate in the fact that my primary school, I was, recommended to go and do the local cross countries for the primary school, and things went well doing that. I was always massive into my football. I was mainly playing football, but it's obviously quite pushed as well at school, which is why we probably have so many people playing football now and why it's so massively played around the world, especially. But I was quite fortunate in that my primary school pushed cross country as well, and then I carried that on into secondary school before joining Tamworth Athletics Clubs were my first actual running club, and joined the group there and did it for kind of enjoyment, because there's actually quite a nice social side to it. Even though it's an individual sport, you can definitely get a lot of socializing out of it. And then I contemplated going to America after kind of sixth form, but I was still with Tamworth AC at the time. And then I had the conversation with Mick about the potential to go to St Mary's. And obviously back then I wasn't anywhere near kind of like the level that I am at now in terms of my athletics. So the offers that in terms of American colleges it wouldn't have been great. So I decided that I wanted to stay close to home anyway, and gave Mick the chance, because he kind of said to me that he would definitely be able to improve me as an athlete, and he wasn't lying. So that paid off, and obviously grateful for his help, and I stayed obviously around St Mary's post graduating, and here we are today.
Yeah, for sure. Did you ever find at university you struggled with like the conflict between like wanting to go out socializing, but also wanting to be able to get up the next day to train, for example? Because that's what I'm going through a little bit at the moment. Is people going, "Oh, you're coming out tonight?" And I'm going, "I've kind of got to get up and run in the morning, so it's going to be a no from me."
No, I think again, it's all about balance. Like, it's good to have a life balance though, and I'm people that are close to me especially know that I don't literally eat, sleep and breathe running. Socializing is a big part of life anyway, and you can drink in moderation as well. There's nothing wrong with that, and going out with your friends is always a good thing anyway. I think that helps massively. You don't want to get too sucked into 24/7 thinking about running, because it's hard as well, and it can be mentally draining. So I didn't have an issue with that, and obviously I was quite fortunate at St Mary's. The environment that you're in, you're living with athletes that are your best mates as well. Yeah. So you've all got the same goals anyway, and that stayed with me until now. All of my mates completely understand where we're at in terms of like athletics and training, and they understand that we can't go getting smashed every weekend. So yeah,
for sure. So I've got some trivia questions that I'd like to move on to, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've listened to any of the other episodes, but what we've got here, we've got 5 trivia questions. Some are about you, some are about running in general. Obviously I'm trying to keep the difficulty similar between guests, because obviously it's pretty difficult to compare the difficulty. You're guest number 5 on the pod, and the other 4 have all got 4 out of 5. So if you get less than 4, you will be in last. Okay, so some of these might be tricky, but some of them might be easy as well. So the first question I've got for you is, in what year did you first break 30 minutes for the 10K or 10,000 meters? So it can be a road or track.
What year did I break 30 minutes? It would have been
I'll give you a little clue. You almost broke 29 as well in this.
Yeah, I know what year. It would have been the year that I went to European under 23s in Bydgoszcz. So that would have been 2017, I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go, 1 out of 1. Yeah, so you ran obviously 29:00.49.
Yeah, it was close. It was close. But we had a job to do that day, and it was just to run the European qualifying standard of, I think it was like 29:20 maybe. So we got that done.
Fair enough. Okay, second question. Obviously, you beat Mo Farah earlier this year, but which club is Mo Farah technically still assigned to?
He is with Newham and Essex Beagles.
Yeah, that is correct. I thought that one might have caught you out a little bit, but no, fair play. Okay, this one is actually a really tricky one, and it's a bit of a longer-winded one, so you're gonna have to pay attention. According to the Power 10, for the under 23 category, you were ranked number 1 in 2 events in the country. So the first one was the 10,000 meters on the track, but what was the second event that you were ranked number 1 for the under 23 category?
I guess that's a bit of a clue. Is it a track event though?
I'm not going to give you. Okay, no, it's not a track event. It's a tough question, so I'm going to say no, it's not a track event.
As an under 23, I'm going to say.
It's a bit of a trick question. I'm really sorry.
I'm actually going to say cross country.
Okay, no, it's park run.
It's a park run.
You were ranked number 1 in the country. I mean, it's questionable because it was Pegwell Bay.
Oh, that's very questionable. Yeah.
You ran 14:36. So yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was Dan Jarvis who was second. But
oh wow, that doesn't surprise me. Him being one behind me.
His was Bushy Park though, so.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. But Bushy Park does hold the world record for park.
Does it? Oh, crikey. So maybe not as slow as you think, but get Kipchoge or Cheptegei down to Pegwell Bay.
Oh, we could, yeah. I'm not sure it'd go down too well on the second lap though. When you're lapping people, they wouldn't enjoy that.
So this fourth one is actually not about running. I've forgotten I put this one in there. So you're a big Birmingham City fan. I am obviously a big Leeds fan. But what was the score the last time the two teams clashed, which was December 2019?
Big score. It was. Oh my gosh! It was 4-3 or 4-4. I'm gonna say it was 4-3 Leeds.
No, it's 5-4 Leeds. Come on, the boys.
4. I knew it was big score. There was loads of goals. Jude Bellingham scored that day as well.
He did. And then you retired his shirt number for some odd reason.
He did save the club though by signing his professional contract and getting us money, because he could have gone for free, but he wanted to make sure the club got their value for him. And he's obviously a big Birmingham City fan, so.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, well, I regret to inform you have only got 2 out of 4, so you will be in last. This last question, I've actually been a bit nice to this one. This literally is, there's 2, it's like a bit like true or false, but there's only 2 answers. So Kenenisa Bekele and Kipchoge are world renowned as the 2 best runners ever. But when it comes down to head, who comes out on top? So when they've raced each other, who's won more?
I'm going to say. I'm actually going to say Bekele.
Yeah. 11-3. He beat Kipchoge 11-3. So yeah, so that's 3 out of 5. It's not horrendous. You say just a little bit.
Hopefully you get a load more guests on, because we need them tougher questions.
Well, I'm not going to ruin who the next guests are, but yeah, as I run out of questions, they're going to get more difficult and difficult as we go along. So I'm sure you won't be bottom for very long. But yeah, anyway, I have one last question before we end off the podcast. Are you training tonight?
No.
Oh, I won't see you down there.
No, I won't see me down there, unfortunately.
No worries. Well, anyway, thank you very much for your time, Ellis. It's been great to chat to you.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having me on.